and welcome back to the fantasy football forecast for the World Champions League out of Greenville, North Carolina. As you can see, I'm alone this week because Cashwell is off to Florida to participate in the World Major Softball Championship with Bad Draw Softball. So I'm flying solo this week, and hopefully we can get through everything smoothly. First of all, I'm going to go over how we did in the pickem last week. I was 5-1 again, whereas Brandon was 4-2, which brings my record to 10-2 and his at 8-4. And now we can check out the top scores from last week, peppered in with a little dead right and dead wrong. We at the end of last week's show, we both picked people that we thought were going to be the top scorers for the particular week, and as you'll see, we both did less than good, I guess would be the right way to put it. First of all, at quarterback, Ben Roethlisberger was the number one scorer for quarterbacks. He was 21 of 27 for 369 yards and 3 touchdowns for 36 points. Tom Brady was the number 2 scorer, 38 of 59, 466, 3 touchdowns. That was good for 35. And the immortal Tyrod Taylor, 23 of 30, 242, 3 touchdowns, 3 interceptions, to go along with 5 rushes for 43 yards and a touchdown, good for 34 points. Both Cash and I picked Drew Brees to be the top scorer for week 2. He was most certainly not the top scorer for week 2, as he was in 25th. He had 255 yards and 1 touchdown and looked generally mediocre against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers last week. As far as the running backs go, D'Angelo Williams was the top running back, if you can believe it, with 77 yards rushing, 3 touchdowns. That was good for 27 points. Redskins rookie Matt Jones was the second highest scored running back with 123 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 23 yards receiving for 25.75. And Dion Lewis was the third highest scoring running back, 40 yards rushing and a touchdown, 6 receptions for 98 yards, good for 19.5 points. My top running back pick for last week was Marshawn Lynch, and he had 41 yards rushing and 21 yards receiving, which was good for 27th best running back of the week. And Cash's top running back was Chris Ivory, who split time with Bilal Powell, and I did not even check to see where he finished on the week, but he had 57 yards rushing, and he was worse than Marshawn Lynch, so that's not good either. The number one wide receiver for the week was Travis Benjamin. 3 catches, 115 yards, 2 touchdowns. That's good for 32 3/4 points. He also had a punt return touchdown. Larry Fitzgerald caught 8 balls for 112 and 3 touchdowns. And Antonio Brown was third with 29.25 points, 9 catches, 195, and a touchdown. Both of us had Julio Jones, who was the 16th highest scoring wide receiver, with a paltry 13 catches for 135 yards and 0 touchdowns. Very paltry. Just absolutely terrible. As far as tight ends go, Crockett Gilmore was the number one tight end with 5 catches for 88 yards and 2 touchdowns. Both of us chose the second tight end on the list, Rob Gronkowski, so we're not completely retarded. Gronk had 7 catches for 113 yards and a touchdown. Anthony Fasano was the third best tight end, 5 catches, 84 yards, and a touchdown. Kickers. Steven Gostkowski had 17, Justin Tucker had 15, and kicking legend Kyle Brenza of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers had 15 points. Cash chose Mason Crosby, who had 14 points, which was good enough for 4th. And I chose Adam Vinatieri, who had 1 point, which was good enough for, I don't know, I didn't bother looking. It was terrible, and I choose not to look at it. On to the defenses. I almost called them the St. Louis Cardinals. The Arizona Cardinals with 21 led that. The Cleveland Browns with 19, led by Travis Benjamin's punt return touchdown. And the Broncos had 16. Both of us chose the Miami Dolphins, matched up against legendary defense shredder Blake Bortles. And we were both quite wrong, as they scored 0 fantasy points. Now moving on to the games of the week. AA versus the Cash Money Millionaires is the first game we're going to go back over. AA was favored by 20, and I chose AA to cover that, which they did not. That was the game I missed this week. And Cashwell chose his team to and the 20 points, and he was correct. Not really much to say about these two teams in this game. It was the two lowest scoring teams of the week matched up against each other. And the Cash Money Millionaires were in their final week without Le'Veon Bell, and their other best running back, Arian Foster, is due to come back sometime in the near future. Maybe week 3, probably not, but we'll see. They were led by David Johnson, who was the Cardinals rookie, had a kickoff return touchdown and a rushing touchdown against the Bears, as the Bears were shellacked by the Cardinals. That's really all there is to talk about on the Cash Money Millionaire side, as Sam Bradford looked like hot garbage. Lamar Miller was the most Lamar Miller game there's ever been, against a premium matchup, against a horrible perceived horrible opponent, and he gets 14 rushing yards and 28 receiving yards and doesn't find the end zone. And to top it off, he gets hurt. Devontae Adams had a meh kind of game. He actually had a chance to win the game for Cash Money Millionaires, as he was the last player actually playing for both teams after Eddie Lacy went down in the game, and he could only come up with 4 1/4 points. And on the other side, Matt Ryan, 3 for 363, had a pretty good day. Latavius Murray had a good day. Eddie Lacy, as I said earlier, got hurt, so he provided 0 for AA. Brandon Cooks did not come up big in a seemingly great matchup. Torrey Smith became the king of garbage time, as he caught a 75-yard touchdown pass while the 49ers were down 33 points to give him 15 points over his projected total and about 20 points over what I projected him for. Keenan Allen was he disappeared after a 17-target week. He only caught 2 passes for 16 yards, and he lost a fumble. So all in all, a pretty horrible day all around for both teams, but a little bit better for AA because they picked up the win. Up next, we'll go to 4th and Inches, which is my team, versus the Dingbats, who were favored by 4. Cash chose the Dingbats, and I picked my team to win, to beat the spread, and my team ended up winning 120 to 110, which would make my team tied for the highest scoring team of the week, along with the Drew Crew, and we'll get to them later. This game, the Dingbats had the highest scoring quarterback in Ben Roethlisberger, and they also had the highest scoring defense with the Broncos, yet still lost. They were let down by Justin Hill and Jeremy Hill and C.J. Anderson, sorry. C.J. Anderson's had a horrific start of the year. He was a lot of people's first-round picks. He was probably the Dingbats' first-round pick. I can't remember exactly where they picked, but they followed him up with Jeremy Hill. They got nothing from their first 2 picks this week, so that's never good. They did have Tyrod Taylor on the bench, but he scored less than Ben Roethlisberger, so that wouldn't have mattered. And he also has Jeremy Hill's handcuff, Gio Bernard, on the bench. And after Jeremy Hill fumbled twice and they quit giving him the ball, Gio Bernard ended up with 123 on the ground for 14 points. So he technically could have won the game if he would have started Gio Bernard, but that's probably not advisable in any circumstance at this point. he started Sammy Watkins this week, and if you remember last week, I said there's no way Sammy Watkins will get 0 again. This week he scored a touchdown and 60 yards receiving on 6 catches, and Amari Cooper looked like people thought Amari Cooper would look, as the Ravens and the Raiders had a shootout, which everyone expected, of course. I mean, why not? Because they always do stuff like that. On the other side, 4th and Inches was buoyed as always, or as seemingly as it will be for the rest of the year, by our 4 wide receivers, Julio Jones, Brandon Marshall, Emmanuel Sanders, and Calvin Johnson. And Julio was the only one of the 4 not to score a touchdown, which is very shocking. He was tackled on the 1-yard line once, though. Yet and still, he had 13 catches for 135, so that's a pretty decent day regardless. Brandon Marshall won the game on Monday night for us with a 7-reception, 101-yard, and a touchdown game. Last week, the Dolphins' defense was good for us. This week, no, not so much. They scored 0 points. No sacks. No interceptions. The Jaguars scored 23 points. It was abysmal. It was not good. And we put in C.J. Spiller this week as he came back for the first time. He was nondescript at best, I guess you would say. He had 7 rushing yards, and on the first play of the game, he caught a 19-yard pass and was, honestly, I don't remember seeing him the rest of the game. Other than that rush, he was invisible. The next game is Rumham versus the Drew Crew, the other high-scoring team of the week, as they also had 120. If you recall, last week Cash said that he would ride Matt Forte because he burned him. Well, unfortunately, Matt Forte only played 1 half because of the score, so I guess that's something Cash was wrong about. I mean, not really in that circumstance, but I mean, what can you do when the guy only plays a half because you're getting beat so bad? The Drew Crew had another stellar outing from Tom Brady, of course, and Demaryius Thomas with 13 points. The Patriots defense chipped in with 11. They left a lot of points on the bench. Allen Robinson had a gigantic day against the Dolphins, of course. Who didn't know that was coming? He could have been started instead of Eddie Rule, I suppose, but with Alshon Jeffrey out, you have to assume that Eddie Rule is going to get more targets than Allen Robinson. He also had Matt Jones, who was the highest-scored running back of the week, on the bench, as he started Alfred Morris instead. Alfred had an okay day, I suppose. He had 60 yards rushing and 15 yards receiving, but Matt Jones scored 2 touchdowns and had 123 yards. On the other side, the Drew Crew, earlier last week when we did the preview show, had Carson Palmer in the starting lineup. They elected to go with Tony Romo instead against the Eagles, which in theory sounds great. In actuality, he didn't really look. I mean, the game turned into a low-scoring affair, and Tony Romo got hurt at some point. I believe it was in the 3rd quarter when he went out with a broken collarbone for the next 8 weeks. But the good news is they have Carson Palmer, who threw for 4 touchdowns yesterday and has looked really good so far this year. So they got a pretty good backup plan there. And AP looked like AP always looks. And he finally got back on track yesterday. Julian Edelman had a big day, had 11 catches, had two receiving touchdowns. Larry Fitzgerald had a monster day. I believe I called for him and Carson to hook up on the show last week, but I was not expecting 3 touchdowns from Larry Fitzgerald. He turned back the clock on us and looked amazing. By the way, both me and Cash were on Carson Palmer. That's something, actually, both of us picked right for once. I was on AP, apparently for my notes. And, alright, I guess I have to bite the bullet. The Rams defense. I said any defense that has to play against the Redskins, you have to start them. Well, the Redskins ran it down their throat. They only got 2 sacks, no interceptions. I was not correct on that. The next game we're going to go to, Feeling Lucky versus the Bears, which features another atrocious miscarriage of judgment on my part, as Drew Brees looked ordinary, I guess you would say, in the game against the Bucs. He only had 255 passing yards and a passing touchdown. And that's not really what you expect from the guy that most people had pegged as the top quarterback option of the week. He was terrible. But despite the fact that he did not do well, despite that, feeling like he still won. And still, well, there was no spread because it was a pick'em game. And they won on the back of all people, D'Angelo Williams. He's not going to play anymore because Le'Veon's coming back. But he scored 3 touchdowns Sunday. And pretty much carried the team other than Gronk. Well, Gronk's always doing Gronk stuff. And Crosby. And the Jets defense also chipped in 10. And Terrence Williams for the Cowboys chipped in 15 as he's now the number 1 target there against a team that gives up. It's probably going to give up big numbers of number 1 wide receivers all year, the Eagles. Other than that, there's not really much to talk about. Jimmy Graham was next to invisible. Amir Abdullah was also next to invisible against the Vikings. And Brandon Coleman, another part of the Saints' total complete failure against the Buccaneers on Sunday. The other side, the Bears, if you recall, I said that I hated their running back matchups, Blunt and Gore. They had a combined 4.25 points. So I wasn't completely wrong about everything. I was definitely right about that. And Cash also said that he didn't like either one of those, I believe. Antonio Brown was fantastic. 195 and a touchdown. He was the 3rd highest scoring receiver of the week. Jarvis Landry, just like I said, any PPR league, he's going to be great. He had another 8 catches for 110. Eli was, I bet he was good this week. He had 292 and 2 touchdowns. He was good fantasy-wise. They blew another late lead, though. On the bench, they had Steve Smith on the bench, and he had 150 yards on 10 catches, which could have won the game for him if they would have played him instead of, I guess, Ladarius Green. Would that have won the game? No, it would not have. They would have played him instead of LeGarrette Blount. They would have won, though, so there's always that. I don't know if I can advocate not playing Steve Smith, but against the Raiders especially. But, I mean, whatever. On to the next game, which is the Super Crew and the Trailer Park Boys. And I had the Super Crew winning this game by 1, and I believe Cash did too. I do not have that on my notes. This game, the main reason I picked the Super Crew to win was one beast mode, Marshawn Lynch, and he turned in a steaming, stinking pile of hot garbage against the Packers. He was not good. They only had 41 rushing yards. Feels like, I don't know if they didn't give him the ball enough or they just couldn't get anything going. Disclaimer, I did not watch the game, so I couldn't really tell you. However, he got 17 points from Steven Gostkowski. He had the highest scoring kicker, and he had 24 from Matt Stafford. So that was pretty good. That really carried him, those 2 guys. And the Chiefs' defense also had 12. And it didn't hurt that the Trailer Park Boys only could manage 79.5 points, as they had Mike Evans go statless. He put up a string of zeros against the Saints. He did start, but he did not receive a target or a reception, which is super odd. Aaron Rodgers looked pretty good. Actually, he looked really good. Against the Seahawks, he put in 25 for them. Jamal Charles had 17. Lost 2 fumbles, though. But other than that, a pretty good night. And they had Leonard Hankerson on the bench, but who's going to start Leonard Hankerson? I think we went over that last week, too. And they also had Tyler Eifert on the bench, but it would not have mattered unless they started him over. It would not have mattered either way. If they started Tyler Eifert, they would have lost either way. Now to the last game, which is Team Drunk versus Show Me Your TDs. Team Drunk, who spent a first-round pick on Andrew Luck, has gotten literally 0 returns out of Andrew Luck so far. He put up Well, he did put up 23 in the first game, but he put up a stinker on Monday night as he put up 14 points and had 3 passes intercepted. He would have needed to put up a ton more than that to win, though. They went into the game down 107-74, so he would have had to score 33 to tie, I believe. Also, I give a call out to Cash. He said that Andrew Luck had another bad matchup and he didn't like him last week. And I will say that I said that Anquan Bolden was not fantasy relevant last week. However, garbage time is relevant in fantasy. And Anquan Bolden, despite being down, I believe it was 35-3 at the time, managed to find his way in the end zone. So he was the second leading scorer for Team Drunk with 13.5. They left Dante Moncrief on the bench, and he had 122 and a touchdown, which is odd. You have that. I don't really know who they could have put him in for. I don't see it. I don't see where they would have put him in, honestly. And on the other side, I believe I guaranteed Peyton Manning would throw for 300 yards. He did not. He only threw for 256, but he had 3 touchdowns. So I mean, I was wrong that he didn't throw for 300 yards, but I still said he was going to have a good game. Man, 27 points is a pretty good game. Odell Beckham also had 22, another big game for him, as at one point he accounted for all of Eli's passing yards except for 5. That was midway through the third quarter. I remember looking at that. Jordan Matthews also had 15.5. He had a good game despite Sam Bradford's struggles. And Show Me Your TDs won despite starting Devin Funchess, who had 1 catch for 15 yards. And we both postured last week about why anyone would start him. And now that I look at his bench, he seemingly has to start Devin Funchess because Deshaun Jackson's hurt, Brashad Perryman's hurt, Julius Thomas is hurt, and Ray Rice is not in the National Football League. So, and Zach Ertz is his only other. So it's either start Devin Funchess or start Zach Ertz. And he chose to start Devin Funchess. But it worked out either way, and that's fine. Once again, the top scorers for the week were the Drew Crew at 4th and Inches. The lowest scoring team was the Cash Money Millionaires, sans Le'Veon Bell and Arian Foster. Things will probably turn around for them. This is the first part of the show this week. I'll be filming 2 episodes. This was the recap. The preview will be either later today or tomorrow. As I said, I'm flying solo this week because Cash isn't around. I'll try to get it up on the internet tonight, and I am out.